asylum seekers bring these immense skill sets, as well as inexhaustible yearning to learn and contribute. I worked in an English language learning classroom with clients ranging from hospital administrators to international lawyers to horticulture experts who came to class every day with a smile on their face and a desire to eventually apply their skills in the workplace. However, this proposed policy creates lines based on nationality and situation and is immensely harming to our welcoming climate and will prevent future immigrants with similar admirable characteristics from moving to this great state. Therefore, this proposed policy will pose a direct threat to the health and safety of legal non-citizens, contributes to an inaccurate conceptualization of the lawfulness of asylum seekers, and deters future immigrants from a state that so desperately needs them. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Slonky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Megan, I just wanted to say hello and welcome and thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Oh, can I just add too, Megan will be representing the state of Maine at Debate for Democracy in New York City next week. And we wish you and the other debate students who will be representing us all the best.
Thank you. Very much. Very excited.
Thank you, Megan. Sorry. Representative Fashan.
And I too would like to thank you for coming for your testimony and welcome you. And I have a question about when you said Catholic Charities meets them at the airport. Does Catholic Charities do anything with regards to helping them with language?
Yes. So that was actually I was an intern in the language department, and over the summer they tried to supplement with. There's no adult education programs during the summer in Portland, and so they try to supplement that during the summer. But that's the only time that they do language. They also offer like interpreters, obviously, but as for language learning, they do over the summers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Tay.
Good evening. I'm not going to read from my testimony. I'm just going to speak from off the cuff. My name is Tay Chong. I'm a business counselor at CEI and representing CEI. We're here to testify in opposition of any J cuts that might affect immigrants and refugees or asylum seekers. So basically what I want to talk about is how immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers could be an economic asset to Maine. In order to do that, you have to look at Maine differently, and Charlie Colgan said this in his Breakfast with Charlie economic series in January. He said basically, the state of Maine is now an urban economy. We have 3 cities, Portland, Lewiston, and Bangor, that make up 70% of the economy. And Portland, South Portland, makes up about half of Maine's $54.8 billion economy. What it also does is it's where all of our social service providers are located. So if you look at just Portland, which is roughly 5% of the state's population, it has almost 50% of public housing. It has most of the homeless shelter beds. It has most of the hospital beds. It has most of the day treatment, whether it's for health or mental health or psychiatric health. It's where everyone goes because it's always been a place of entry for many people. Portland's been an immigrant town. It's been an immigrant entry point for lots of other immigrants as well. So you also, when you look at that aspect and you see the number of people that are coming, it's no wonder that the median age of those 3 cities mirrors the national median age. We all know that Maine is the oldest state in the nation. Maine's median age is 43.5, but those 3 cities, their median age is almost 36 or 37, which is almost the same as the national average. What you're seeing in those cities is also happening nationally too. We're becoming an urban society where people are migrating to those areas, immigrants and refugees, racial minority populations. There are about 303 million people living in the United States. About a third of them live in 8 cities across the United States. And it's also where the economic engine is and a lot of prosperity is taking place. Immigrants and refugees and asylees are hardworking people. You've heard all that here. The 2014 U.S. Census said that 50% of Portlanders, 50% of asylees or immigrants and refugees who moved to Portland in the last 5 years have a college degree or higher. And it's also evidenced by all the things that they're doing in the Portland school system. You see that a third of the Portland schools are immigrants and refugees. There's 1,700 people taking ESL classes at Portland Adult Ed. There are also people taking classes at Learning Works. And also you have a large number of people taking classes at USM and other English classes. And the other piece is that they are incredibly entrepreneurial, and they also, just like the national rate, they're twice as likely to start a business like any other place. And so when these GA cuts affect service centers, it also affects the economic engine of Maine, and it can put Maine at, at a disadvantage. And we urge you not to cut these because it's beyond just the moral and social aspect, but it has an economic impact for the rest of the state of Maine.
Thank you. Question, Representative Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tong. I think either you or some other folks from your organization spoke to the workforce committee.
I did.
It was you, I thought it was. And in that committee, we talked a little bit about why so many of the folks who are coming here as asylum seekers are so well educated and certainly different from the general population. Can you explain a little bit about why that is?
Sure, and I'm not an expert, but I'm just hearing and just hearing people's stories, but you have to be incredibly motivated if you want to leave your home and you want to leave your family. And a lot of people who are coming here seeking asylum have done that. They're incredibly motivated, and in order for them to also be incredibly motivated, they have to have access and resources to be able to leave their countries. And most of them are the highly educated, and they were the privileged ones in their communities. And and because they have that motivation, they have that education, it's no wonder that so many of them want to give back, and so many of them want to volunteer. You've heard lots of stories tonight about people volunteering at the Provo Street Center, or at Learning Works, or at other places like that. They're the kind of immigrants and refugees that we want. That's what helped to build this great country, and hopefully they can build this great state.
Thank you, again. Chris Heston? Come on up.
I think.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Okay.
It's getting late. No.
So good evening, Senator Hamper, Representative Rotundo, Representative Gutin, and distinguished members of both committees. My name is Chris Hasted. I work for Maine Court Justice, and I'm speaking today in opposition to Part KKK and the related deappropriation of $5.4 million in each year of the budget. This represents a cut of about 42% of the General Assistance General Fund budget, so it's very significant, and we believe that it will inevitably reduce access to food and shelter for people who are the neediest people in the state. I'm not going to read my testimony. I'd like to just make 3 quick points, and I'd like to take a shot at answering the question that I believe was posed by the Representative Grant and Representative Martin. I can't remember after this long day, but I'd like to talk for a minute about why I think that the spending per poor person or person living in poverty measure that has been spoken so much about is a poor measure upon which to base a policy decision in this committee. First of all, we actually worked with the Margaret Chase Smith Center about 4 years ago on a similar analysis with respect to general assistance and poverty. And the first thing we did in that analysis was weight the data by the general assistance maximums. As you've heard today, while all the municipalities in the state fundamentally have to follow the same general assistance law, they are required to follow the general assistance maximums, which are different in SMSAs and municipalities in different counties in the state. So the first thing you have to do when you're looking at this data is weight it, because there's different housing costs. That's largely what maximums relate to. The second point is that you heard a lot about sort of and this I think gets to your question, the people in the shelters in Portland. And Portland provides about almost 50% of the shelter bed nights in the state. The Oxford Street Shelter provides about 25% of them. As you have heard today, those shelter beds, mat by mat, lined up on the floor, if you were to take a census in the Oxford Street Shelter tonight, you would find that they come from Eastport and Millinocket and York and Hamden, all over this state. About a third of them are from Portland. The remainder are from other states, other municipalities in the state, or more recently from other countries. And so those folks, when you're doing this analysis, do not appear in the denominator. They do not, they're transient. They don't appear in the denominator of the calculation. They're not part of the census. But they do appear in the numerator when you're looking at what's being spent on general assistance. And so they skew the analysis of what an individual city is spending on their residents. And then the final point I'd make in sort of this analysis is, I think many of you have heard over the years, one of our chief concerns about the General Assistance Program is the lack of uniformity in the administration of the program throughout the state. And from our perspective, the most important reason to look at this spending per poor person analysis is to get a sense of who isn't spending in the General Assistance Program and what is being done about that, because the Portlands, the Lewistons, the Bangors often take responsibility for people in other parts of the state. I know I'm out of time. I want to call attention to two other points very, very quickly. The first is that I've attached to my testimony a study that was done a couple of years ago by the University of New England that will show you the characteristics of people who are long-term people who need general assistance for a longer period of time. Typically, people need it for about 3 to 6 months. For people who need it for longer periods, I'd like you to take a look at their characteristics. Not surprisingly, they have significant physical or mental illnesses, and they have 160% higher incidence of adverse childhood experience than others. And finally, I just connect that point to the comments that the Commissioner made in her orientation to you, where she talked about the premature death rates among people with serious and persistent mental illness and people who are homeless, and how they have to fight the hardest for the care they need. And the first step in recovering or treating those kinds of illnesses is to ensure stable housing or roof over your head. Thank you for my extra time. I appreciate it.
Senator Valentina?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'd just like a definition of workfare. Basically, what is it? Who does it? Is it required of people? Examples of jobs, and is there any pay involved?
There is no pay involved. It is part of the General Assistance Statute. It is a provision in which municipalities can ask people to work off the assistance they get. Portland has a very expansive workfare program. I believe Lewiston does, and Bangor does as well. Some of the smaller municipalities don't, but Portland, for example, has a very substantial one. And basically, if you get $200 in assistance, you would be required to work volunteering at some part of the city or in a local nonprofit at the rate of minimum wage to work off the assistance you've received. And many of the folks who spoke here today talked about doing workfare for the assistance that they receive.
As a follow-up, that's why I asked, because so many people did say that, and so many people were volunteering. Do we have any statistics on that as far as the workfare goes? I mean, if you're giving somebody $200 and you're saying you've got to go work, you're not really giving them something.
Haven't they earned it?
Exactly. So I'm just wondering, do you have any statistics or does Preble Street or Portland or anybody have statistics on workfare?
The city,
what they're really contributing to their general assistance that they're getting?
I'm familiar with the City of Portland data, and I can get you a copy of that. I don't know, I'm sure that the cities of Lewiston and Portland, Bangor have data. I don't have access to that, but Portland's is on their website, and I'd be glad to get it for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris, for your presentation. You're maybe the third or fourth person who's mentioned inconsistencies in the way GA is distributed throughout the state. Can you speak about that just briefly? What do you mean by inconsistencies?
I believe it is my experience, and I've done this work for many years now, that there are some municipalities in which Portland, Bangor, Lewiston, they do an extraordinarily professional job of administering the program. They respect due process. They comply with the law. In some other municipalities, adherence to the law is not quite as, it's not carried out quite as capably as it is in some of those other municipalities. Sometimes people are discouraged from making applications. In fact, that's relatively common. In my experience, to see people who are told, you're not going to be eligible, don't even bother to apply. That's against the law. You have to be given an application. You have to be offered the due process of allowing you to complete that application. And that's why you'll see, if you looked at the data if you get the data that I believe you're requesting from the department today, asking to see the GA expenditures by municipality, and there will be some municipalities that don't even appear on that, you'll see that there are some that spend $0, there are some that spend $100, and you sort of wonder about that, given that you know that those are in high poverty areas. And so what my experience has been is that it's difficult for people to get assistance in some municipalities. In some smaller towns, it's just very hard because you have to go and ask the third selectman, who, you know, maybe you grew up with their daughter and you're embarrassed to go see that person. In other places, I see people actively discouraged. Thank you.
Representative Gattini?
Thank you.
I'm going to take a best shot on the next name. I think it's Amoge Hassan. No? Taking my best guess at what I'm seeing. Not here. Okay. K24. I couldn't see you back there, Kate.
Corner is nice. As was the welcoming center. Senator Hanford and Reiki, Representative Rotundo and Gattini, members of both committees. My name is Kate Dufour, and I'm here on behalf of the Maine Municipal Association to provide testimony in opposition to Part K of the Governor's proposed budget. And I'm here basically to underline the municipal frustration that you've heard throughout the day. We administer on the property tax dollar, property taxpayers' dime, a program that the state requires us, mandates us to administer. Not only are we required to administer it on our own dimes, you set the parameters. State law decides how much money we provide to anybody who presents themselves. That's the program. We are continuously frustrated by a little bit of what you've heard today, that municipalities don't do it right, some municipalities do it better than others. We're frustrated by the fact that we're in a partnership relationship with the state, and in the past, changes to this program have come at the cost, or proposed changes to this program have come at the cost of the property taxpayers and not the state. And before you in Part K, you see a proposal where the state would save its money, but at the expense of the property taxpayer. And we are incredibly, incredibly frustrated. And I know that's not your fault, but you can help us. And what we are doing is we are urging your assistance. There seems to be a willingness to change the general assistance program. We ask that you find a way to do that doesn't harm the property taxpayers, that whatever savings the state may acquire, that the property taxpayers acquire those as well. And we have put a proposal before you, it's found in the last pages of my testimony, which suggests that the municipalities should just get out of the program altogether. Take us out of the administration, the financing, and the management of this program. And we think that's a win-win-win solution. It's a win for municipalities because you get us out of this debate, this welfare debate, this pointing fingers debate. We get out of that. It's a win for residents and applicants who apply for this program because they can go to one resource to get programs. They can, when they go to a DHHS office or a regional office, that person can make sure that they have access to all programs that are available. Currently, someone will come to the municipality and ask for assistance, and we will have to call DHHS to see whether there are other programs they could access or whether or not they qualify for anything else. This would be one-stop shopping. Go right to the DHHS program and get what you need. And finally, it would allow the state to determine how large this program should be without involving the property taxpayers. If it's $20 million program, great. If it's 8, whatever it is, it gets the property taxpayers out of this he said, she said finger pointing, and we would appreciate the relief. And I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Kate. Senator Valentino?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It was mentioned, and I may be wrong, is the Maine Municipal Association involved in the lawsuit on Portland on the general assistance?
Yes.
Yes. And could you tell me a little bit more about the status of the case and how quickly that case may be resolved?
I'm not on the inside on that one. I know it's been tied up and it's going through the process. The process has been slow, frustratingly to us, because we are awaiting a decision as to who do we listen to? Do we listen to the governor, who has suggested that this is the way general assistance should be administered, Or do we look at state law? Do we look at the legislature? So again, the municipalities have been put in this position of having two people telling them how to administer a program and then completely opposite directions, exposing municipalities to lawsuit, whether from an applicant side or whether from the governor withholding reimbursements, as you've heard. So we're in this crazy position. We want out.
Where in the process is the lawsuit?
I'm not an attorney, it's somewhere in between. Somebody, it's out of our hands, the smart people have it, they're gonna figure something out and tell us someday. But I can actually give you a common sense answer for a work session.
Thank you very much.
Senator Brady.
The alternative approach that you propose, has anyone put that forward as a bill so we might fully consider it?
Yes, and it will be before your committee at some point.
Do you know who's put it forward?
Your colleague immediately behind you and Senator Savio.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Representative Stuckey.
Thank you. Kate, first of all, I thought that was a very legal sounding answer.
Thank you. It's the benefit of not being an attorney, I can say whatever I want.
So I guess my question is, if you were part of a group that several years ago took an extensive look at the GA program, and as you look around the edges, we've heard from some of the bigger municipalities that GA is a component of a larger network of services and service centers designed to help folks move out of hopefully a temporary situation where they need some assistance. If the state were to take that over, right, how big of a takeover are you talking about? I mean, is it?
Our proposal is all of it. And if the state were going to take it over, you retain the reins to design this new program.
So we heard from Mark Swan earlier about the using GA as funding for shelter costs. Is your proposals implying that shelter costs and other emergency on-the-ground services that are ancillary to the GA program would also be turned over to the state?
To the extent that they are funded with GA revenues.
So earlier I asked the commissioner if you were to deny these services to certain classes of people, what happens to those people? And I guess if that's my concern about what you're talking about is we turn it over to the state and then the state decides that they're going to rule out groups of people that are significant populations in certain municipalities. What happens then?
You are the legislature, and you can design a program.
Another legal answer.
Sure,
Okay.
answer
It was a setup question. That's my initial response to the MMA's idea that it's not a simplistic situation. The communities that have been on the ground and trying to support people who are in these kinds of situations and come asking for assistance have decades of experience trying to develop very sophisticated and complementary programs and services to help people. And it's a huge mistake, I think, for us and others to think we can just lift one piece of it out and give it away to somebody else and be done with it. Because it's just on the ground. I don't believe that's simple. That's not a question, and I'll be done now.
And guess where that bill's going to be going, Representative?
You can't believe the anticipation I have for it. The only regret I have is that you won't be to enjoy it.
You'll have plenty of time to talk about it.
I would respond to that non-question with the following, which is, that's one of our ideas. We would appreciate any idea that does not shift additional burdens on the property taxpayers. We'll work with anybody, as long as the outcome is not more burden at all.
Thank you, Kate. Good.
Thank you.
Dallas, or Dallas? Ogaba?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your patience. My name is Damas Mugaba. I'm a proud citizen of this country, proud resident of Westbrook, Maine. I live in Maine with my wife and 2 kids, a 16-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. And I've been here for almost 15 years. When I came in 2000, I don't know, someone mentioned that there's some cities that these guys do from the general assistance. But I never had the general assistance. I was told that if you don't have kids, you don't even go to the city. So I never went through that. So how did I survive? I was told that if you go to churches, they can provide you with food. So I went to the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Portland. And I was given canned food for a week, and I was told to come back 4 months later. And I said, but this is only for a week. And the next lady who gave me the food said, yeah, I know, but you have to go around all the other churches and come back here in 4 months. So what did I do? Because I was unable to support myself, and the church couldn't provide enough food. So I found the only job I could find was to work without a work authorization. I knew it was not the right thing to do, but I had no option. I had to feed myself. But I was lucky because I had a couch to crash on. My brother was living nearby by that time. 8 months later, I got my asylum, and I went straight to a temporary agency called Manpower. And I worked for them at USM for 3 months, and when my assignment was ended, they sent me to UNAM, where I've been for the last 14 years. I don't know how to stress out this enough, but nothing feels humanizing like not being able to provide for yourself, or being able to be legally able to work in this country. You don't want to be visible. You are afraid to express yourself. You are afraid to make friends. You are ashamed, and you think that people can see the shame in your face. And then what you resolve to is to isolate yourself. Please don't put new manners in this situation. By cutting GA for new manners, you'll be leaving people without options. Right now, GA offers them the only option and path towards stability until they get permission to work. I was lucky enough to get asylum only in 8 months. But now immigration takes 3-4 years. That's a very long time to be living with no source of money. Before I came here, I was a pilot in Rwanda. And I wanted to continue my career as a pilot. But after I got my asylum in July of 2001, 9/11 happened just 2 months after that. And I realized that career won't be possible. Since I had my wife and kid back there that I needed to bring over here. But when I started UNAM, I started filing paper. I started in the mailroom, filing paper all day long. Then I worked my way up to the financial benefits consultant that I am today. I've completed my 2 master's degrees here, one in community economic development, the other in business administration. I've been working and paying taxes from the 3rd week of being in this country. And I've been paying my real estate taxes from a property I own in Westbrook, where I live now with my family. I contribute to my community in several ways. I volunteer several hours with the cash program, the Goodwill, preparing taxes for low-income families, and countless hours working in my community, because I'm also the president of the Rwanda community here in Maine. But my story is not unique to me. There are several examples. My brother, who came here first, worked for the state of Maine as the coordinator for the refugee program, and then later for Catholic Charities as the director for the refugee and immigration services. But even though he moved out of Maine, he still considers Maine as his home because he has properties in South Portland. He always comes here at least twice a year. It's no secret that Livingston became more vibrant since the Somali population moved there 14 or 13 years ago. There are businesses, small markets, taxi companies, car shops owned by immigrants, new immigrants that are growing up in Westbrook and Portland. And all these folks, all they want is the opportunity to work hard, to provide for their families, and to give back. Because when we get here, even though I didn't go through the GA, one or another got help around. So you shouldn't fool yourself that we come here because we come here to seek the general assistance. Many people come here, they come here because they know someone. And because I've been told how great Maine is. And because the people here are friendly. I don't have snow, I don't have the cold. I don't ski, I don't snowboard, I don't ice fish. But I've been here for 15 years. I've bought my house here. This is where I'm raising my family. And these folks behind me, they are my family. They want to make the same living that I'm making and contribute to the community. So, to conclude, my new men like myself are hard working because we've been given the opportunity to work. And that's all these new men are here doing. So the GA program is just a bridge for them to get to that point. And thank you very much for carrying these benefits.
Thank you. Representative Gibson.
Thank you, Thomas. And again, I want to thank you for the contribution you're making to our community. And thank you for sharing your story and wish you continued success. And I hope that your two children have the same opportunity for success that my two children have had growing up in Westbrook. So thanks for coming up and sitting here all day with us. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Citizen Ketchel.
Good evening, and I'd like to think that we're all citizens or soon to be citizens.
Thank you for the purpose.
Someone up there, look here.
Yes, thank you for the purpose.
And I did provide the tribute, I was going to mention this. I am Dennis Ketchel, and I'm from Belgrade, Maine. I am pleased to appear before you today to provide testimony on the general assistance reforms proposed in this budget. Now, I've heard a lot of compelling testimony today, and I've done a lot of rewriting of my testimony. But, nonetheless, I'm going to be the Grinch in the room. All right? I think I'm the only one that marked 4 reforms on the papers. Now, that doesn't mean I'm the only one that are for the reforms. It just means I'm the only one here today. Okay. First, I'd like to make a general comment about the governor's proposed budget, if I may. Any tax reform initiative, especially as one as bold as the one proposed, will have many detractors, especially among special interest groups on both the left and the right. In general, I support this tax reform initiative, just as I, as a member of the Gang of 11, supported that initiative. I have not talked to anyone who does not believe that we must pursue some form of tax reform. However, in order to do so, we must break away from current thinking about changing governmental operations. That is, away from a 2 to 4 year process, in large part driven by our election cycles, to an approach that looks at a longer term approach, 10 to 15 or more years out, to improving Maine's economy and the lives of all Mainers. The governor's proposal, in my view, does just that. How much of it will pass depends largely on how both Democrat and Republican legislators, you included, can see beyond the political turmoils generated by special interest groups. Having been a member of this committee, I understand how difficult it would be. But doing the right thing isn't always easy. It is also often more difficult than determining what the right thing to do is. I believe a tax reform package will come out of the process that you're undertaking, and one that is good for all Mainers. My one hope in all of this is that a coalition of special interest groups on either side of these issues does not kill but many of the reforms. In specific regards to the general assistance reforms proposed in this budget, as a former member of this committee, I have spoken to the need for reform and more aggressive oversight in the general assistance program whenever the subject came before us. Therefore, I support the intent, as I understand it, of this proposed reform measure, these proposed reform measures. The state must change its current approach to providing general assistance at the local level, and changing what is viewed by many to be an incentive for larger municipalities to reach general assistance expenditures that exceeds 0.0003 of municipal property valuations. Because as you know, once you exceed that amount, the state's support for GA expenditures increases from 50% to 90%. Or putting it more directly, for every dollar required for general assistance, the municipality only spends 10 cents, with the state providing the other 90 cents. While only a few, very few municipalities reach this level of expenditure, the greater majority of the state's general assistance expenditures goes to those few that do. I believe that many of the proposed reforms provide for appropriate changes to meet both the needs of those receiving assistance and for more fairly distributing limited state resources across all municipalities. And with that, I will entertain any questions you may have.
Questions? Representative Moore?
Thank you very much. Welcome back. I'm just wondering whether or not Portland should start billing the towns that people come from for the services they provide to those citizens that come from my area, for example, or yours.
Well, listen, I understand your question. And we've had conversations about this in the past. I think general assistance as a whole needs to be overhauled. I think the comments by Mark Swan were relevant. 65%, according to the study that was done in 2013, I think that came out of this committee's request. The task force was put together to look at general assistance.